Hey everyone, this is Richard with the VR Post, and I don't know about you, but I am very excited for this year's NBA Finals. It's the first time ever in the history of the NBA that two teams are playing each other 3 years in a row for the NBA Finals. The last 2 years were absolutely epic. I see no reason why this year won't be even better than the last two, especially since both teams improved from last year's finals. Basically, this video is going to be an aggregate of all the research I could find online, breaking down the two teams, all the different key stats to look out for. I'm very excited to share this with you. I am really excited what everyone else here has to say about it, so please like and comment below. And if you want, I'll do this video again in the future. So the first thing that I'm going to look into, again, first time in NBA history, teams are playing each other back-to-back years, back-to-back-to-back years in the NBA Finals. I'm really surprised this has never happened before in the 1980s with the Lakers and Celtics. They did play 3 out of 4 years from 1984 to 1987. The Lakers won 2 out of 3. And the Lakers also played the Sixers 3 out of 4 years from 80 to 83. Yes, the Lakers made the NBA Finals a lot, and they also beat the Sixers 2 out of 3 years there. So Vegas, they actually have the Cavaliers as an underdog. You can see why when looking at the player stats here. Kevin Durant 95, Curry 95, Thompson, so on and so forth. LeBron is the best player ranked on both teams, but he just doesn't have the same firepower as the Golden State Warriors. And not only does Vegas have Golden State as a favorite, but ESPN's BPI, which is usually pretty accurate, has the Warriors at 94% favorites over the Cavaliers. So good luck, LeBron. This is the sixth time in your career that you're an NBA Finals underdog out of your 8 Finals appearances. I know you've won before as the underdog, and if you're curious, the 2 times he was actually the favorite were 2011 against the Mavs, where as the favorite he actually lost, go figure, and the 2013 Spurs, where he actually did win as the favorite. I feel like this is huge for LeBron James's legacy. When you look at his numbers, there's no doubt that he's one of the best players of all time. Most career points per game in the playoffs in NBA history, just past Michael Jordan. But if he loses this finals, he's going to drop to 3-5 in the NBA Finals. That does not look good when trying to compare him to Michael Jordan. And but if he does win and goes to 4-4, beating the possibly the greatest team ever, the Golden State Warriors, back-to-back years, you know what? He actually has a case there for adding to his legacy and getting even closer to Michael Jordan. So before we go into this year's finals, I do kind of just want to look back on the last 2 finals and see what we can learn from them and how that might affect this year's outcome. So this year in the regular season, each team went 1-on-1 against each other. You may recall the Cleveland Cavaliers ended up having a monster game on Christmas Day, Christmas night. Richard Jefferson threw the hammer home on some big retro dunks against the Warriors, and they did win at home. However, the Warriors, they actually destroyed the Cleveland Cavaliers at home less than a month later. So each team defended their home court. No big surprise there. Let's go back even further. So the 2016 finals, the Cavs won. The 2015 finals, the Warriors won. But some key stats that actually jump out. A road team won 3 times in each series. The Cavs won twice in 2016, and the Warriors won twice in 2015. It's pretty incredible. And actually, the road team closed out the series in each year, too. That's pretty rare to happen. And for it to happen back-to-back years, it's actually quite an accomplishment. The biggest thing that actually stands out to me, you have to look at the points per game in last year's finals. So the Golden State Warriors in their 3 wins averaged 104 points, 110 points, and 108 points per game. Meanwhile, in their losses, they actually averaged 90, 97, 101, and 89. So the key number there is 100 points. If they get to 100, they're going to be very hard to beat. I don't know if Cleveland really has the firepower to contain them. And I was actually surprised that Cleveland was so good defensively. When you look at their defensive numbers, you really don't think of them as a defensive team. Golden State's actually a better ranked defensive team. So for Cleveland to show that heart in last year's finals and come back really says something. And when you go back even further, the 2015 finals, again, the Warriors scored only 100.7 points per game. Last year, 99.9 points per game. So they're averaging just at 100 points a game in the finals last 2 years. And at least in 2016, that was 15 points below their regular season average. So props to Cleveland. They're going to have to do that again this year, play absolutely beast mode in the finals on defense to have any kind of chance against the Warriors. And again, their wins, the Golden State 2 years ago, 108 points. That was an overtime game, 103, 104, 105. But their losses, their 2 losses against Cleveland, 93, 91 points. Thank you, Matthew Dellavedova, for that great defense on Steph Curry 2 years ago. So there's a few other key numbers that stand out to me when you look at, let's say, Steph Curry. Last year in the finals, he was hurt. Some people say he averaged only 22 points per game on 40% shooting. They need more from him this year. He's averaging 28 points in the playoffs so far. 50% field goal shooting, actually up from the regular season. So if he's able to do that, or just anything above 40%, they're going to look pretty good. Klay Thompson, 19 points per game last year in the finals. However, if you look at him in the playoffs this year, this is a huge wild card. He's averaging only 14 points per game, 38% shooting. That's really just horrendous is the only way to put it. So that's a big wild card. If law of averages, I believe he's going to come back from that. I can't see him shooting 38% in another round. Kind of reminds me earlier in the year when the Warriors lost back-to-back games. One was a close one against the T-Wolves. Steph Curry was shooting kind of poorly. Everyone was wondering, oh, what's wrong with him? Is he in a slump? The Warriors are in trouble. Since then, he went on fire, and the Warriors have only lost really one game since then, one of their last games of the year to Utah, which in my opinion actually helped them. If they went into the finals now with, let's say, a 25-game win streak, there might be a little bit more pressure. Losing that game against Utah really, really helped them. Some other key stats from last year's finals. Kevin Love, one of the big part of the Cavaliers' big three, he averaged only 8.5 points per game in last year's finals in 26 minutes. Right now, he's averaging 17 points a game in the finals. For the Cavs to have any chance this year, Kevin Love has to be at about 15 and 10. He's not going to be able to bring them a ring averaging 8 and 7. LeBron last year, he kind of obviously carried the Cavaliers. He had back-to-back 41-point finals games. Overall, he averaged an insane stat line: 30, 11, 9, 2.5 steals, 2.3 blocks. Irving last year averaged 27, 4, and 4. It's actually kind of surprising that as a point guard, he averages such few assists. I'm going to get to that in a little bit. That's one of the key trends to look for in this year's finals. Curry, Andre, and the boys, they did a bit better in 2015. Curry averaged 26 when he was healthy, 44% shooting. Now, who's to say if that was because Dellavedova was guarding him? Maybe Irving, when he was back last year, contributed a bit more, and it was more than just an injury to Steph. But some big things that stood out to me: Klay Thompson 2 years ago, only 40% shooting, very similar to his slump right now. The Warriors can't have that happen. Iguodala, 16 points. He was their second leading scorer, 52% shooting. And one of the big upgrades, obviously, the Warriors added MVP Kevin Durant. This is probably the first NBA Finals that has 3 MVPs playing in their prime: Durant, Curry, and of course LeBron James. And the reason why this is so big, Harrison Barnes did nothing the last 2 years in the NBA Finals. 2015, he averaged 8 points a game on 37% shooting, and last year, 9 points on 35% shooting. So when you replace that with someone who's shooting 55% in this year's playoffs and 25 points a game, right in line with his season average, that's a huge boost. And also, last year's playoffs, when Draymond Green was averaging about 8 rebounds per game last year, their second leading rebounder in last year's finals was Andre Iguodala. He was averaging 6 rebounds per game. You had Draymond Green in the finals averaging 10, Andre averaging 6. So this year with Kevin Durant coming in, he's actually averaging 8 rebounds per game, 1.2 blocks. They're going to need, again, another 8 or 10 rebounds per game from Kevin Durant to really keep LeBron in check. And that's the last 2 years of the NBA Finals, just key stats that I did some research on, just wanted to share with you, key trends and stuff to watch this year. And obviously each team is greatly improved this year. Deron Williams is there, Kyle Korver is there. Let's see who else. Channing Frye is playing a much bigger role. And it really reminds me of the 2014 NBA Finals where the San Antonio Spurs, where are they? The Spurs, they lost that heartbreaking series to the Heat and LeBron the year before, and they were on a mission that year to come back, win the championship, and dethrone the King. And that finals ended up being a quick 5-game series, just destroying the Heat. I personally hope that this year's finals is not that much of a blowout. We've already had a really bad finals. We really deserve a great series here. We've been really patient waiting for this to come and happen. And honestly, if the Warriors end up blowing out the Cleveland Cavaliers, it's not that great for the NBA. But there's a great clip here that I actually want to share of Draymond Green talking trash before the season started when asked about playing the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals. Let me play that clip really quick.
If Cleveland comes out of the East, I want to destroy Cleveland. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. But I also know that there are steps to get to that point. And if and when we get to that point, I want to annihilate them.
Wow, strong words right there by a very strong man. Let's see if he lives up to them. He sounds hungry. That was back in October. You know has that suspension from last year on his mind. He's going to be playing like a beast. You can see from his stats, he's shooting much better than last year's finals. 47% from three. If he shoots 47% from three in this series, it's game over because you can't leave anyone on the Warriors open if he's shooting 47% from three. So another big trend that I want to point out, LeBron James, he's won a road game in the NBA playoffs for something like 30 playoff series in a row. It's an NBA record. Odds are he's probably going to win a road game in this series. So that'll really make things interesting. That means it'll be at least a 5 or 6 game series. Cleveland winning 1 game in Golden State. And then Golden State will probably win a few games in Cleveland as well. So look out for that trend. And this is also one reason why it's such a great NBA Finals is combined both teams lost only 1 game. It's absolutely insane. That's an NBA record for fewest losses going into an NBA playoff. And here are some of the stats actually to look at. So LeBron, he's doing his thing. Kyrie, Kevin Love, they're all doing their thing. Let's look at the Warriors. Klay Thompson, only 14.4 points per game. The Warriors were actually they had the trifecta this year. 3 players in the regular season averaging over 20 points per game. That's only happened a few other times in NBA history. The Kings did it a few years ago with Isaiah Thomas, DeMarcus Cousins, and Rudy Gay. And then the last team to do it before then were the Warriors with Steven Jackson, Baron Davis, Monta Ellis. And then before then, the Run TMC Warriors with Tim Hardaway, Mitch Richmond, and Chris Mullin. So let's see if they're able to do this during the NBA Finals. I'm not sure if they will. And it's pretty crazy that Kevin Love is 1 point per game away from doing that too. So we have a big 3 on each side. And again, if Kevin Love averages over 10 to 15 points per game, better than last year's 8, things will look good for Cleveland. And there's a few things regarding the playoffs this year. Yes, they both dominated, but I think they had very easy roads to the NBA Finals. The Warriors, they beat an 8 seed, the Portland Trailblazers, no shockers there. And then they beat the Utah Jazz. And the Utah Jazz, for their 2 home games, first of all, they were kind of tired and worn out from that great series against the Clippers. And then their point guard, George Hill, went down for games 3 and 4. Without George Hill last year, the Jazz were not a playoff team. Their backup point guards are not very good. So I believe the Warriors got lucky there. Rudy Gobert was also not at full strength. And then we all know what happened with Kawhi Leonard in the conference finals. They were up 23, showed that the Warriors are a vulnerable team. I know the Cavs are going to look at that game tape to see what they can do and learn from that game and bring it into the NBA Finals. Then he got injured, and then the Warriors won the next 4. The Cavs, the East is just terrible. Isaiah Thomas was hurt. Paul George actually gave them their biggest fight in round 1. They almost won game 1 on that buzzer beater. CJ Miles took it instead of Paul George. Who knows what happens if Paul George takes that shot, makes it. We have a whole different series. Cleveland's swagger for the rest of the playoffs is completely different. So the fact that they are 12-1, yeah, that was against the East. It's not very impressive. Some other things to look at. Basically, I think the key trends are it's going to come down to the front court, right? If the Cavs can get, let's say, 20 points out of Thompson and Fry, that's going to be a huge difference maker. If you look at the backcourt, LeBron, Kyrie, Steph, Clay, Durant, they're going to basically I don't want to say cancel each other out, but it's going to be close to a push. You can't really say one way or the other. But when you look at the big men, who do we have here for the Warriors? We have McGee and Pachulia averaging 13 points combined. You look at the Warriors and the Cavs seem to have a bit of an edge there, especially when you look at Channing Frye. He's a big X factor this year. In the playoffs, he's averaging, look at this, 55% shooting and 52% from three. So if he does that, and that's making about 2 threes a game, if he's able to do that against the Warriors, it's going to be very game-changing. It really will open things up for LeBron James. And you look at the X factors and the things that let's say the Cavaliers really need to happen to win. Darren Williams is going to have to keep on crushing it. Let's look at his stats. He's averaging 5.6 points, but really it's the field goal shooting, 54 and 50 from three. He had a great closeout game against the Celtics. They need more of that. And just look at the three-point shooting overall for the Cavs. 42%, 35, 47, 52. Everyone's shooting lights out. And they're going to need more of that to advance. I think it looks like they have several players shooting 40% from three. And if the Warriors, I know they're a great defensive team, they're going to have to keep that number down to keep the Cavs in check. And it's going to be a streaky series. There's going to be some games where I'm sure the Cavs will shoot lights out, some games where they won't. Those games where they shoot better, they're obviously have a better opportunity against the Warriors. Something that jumps out to me, Richard Jefferson, Shumpert, Smith, they all shot 33%, 36, and 35% respectively for the playoffs. Pretty good numbers, but they're going to need a little bit more. And J.R. Smith, a lot of people say he's an X factor for this team. He only averaged 8 points per game this year, and when you look at last year, it wasn't much better. So if I wouldn't really hold my breath looking for J.R. Smith to have a good performance, especially he kind of already did what he had to last year. Got his ring, he's happy. I don't see him as a hungry player like LeBron or the rest of the Cavs roster. There is one other stat that for the Cavs to win, this is the major X factor. Kyrie Irving, I alluded to it before, he averages 5.8 assists per game. When Kyrie has 6 assists and up this year, so a bit more from his average, and the big three are both playing on a non-back-to-back, very obscure stat I know, but the Cavs are 26-5 this year, including the playoffs, when Irving has over 6 assists. And another reason why this is important, when the Cavs beat the Warriors on Christmas, Irving had 10 assists. But when the Warriors blew out the Cavs, Kyrie only had 2 assists. So that's a huge number. If Irving averages 6 or 7 assists per game in this finals, I think the Cavaliers will win this series in 6 or 7. But I don't think he will. The Warriors know that, and it's below his average, so he has to exceed his average against a team that's going to lock down on that. Especially LeBron's going to do most of the ball handling in ISO situations. The X factor for the Warriors, JaVale McGee right here, he's averaging, for the regular season, 65% shooting, but for the playoffs, he's actually averaging 74% shooting. And per 36 minutes, he was averaging 24 points per game in this year's finals, or this year's playoffs. Absolutely incredible. David West, he's also averaging basically 65% shooting, 57% in the playoffs so far. Where are we? 57%. He's also averaging per 36, 11, 7, and 7. That's incredible. Look, 2.8 assists in just a few minutes per game. And the other big X factor, obviously, is Klay Thompson. He has to do better from his shooting. He can't shoot 38% and expect to win. I think as long as he's above average or at average, so let's just say 40 to 44%, the Warriors will be okay, especially if Draymond Green's shooting 50%. That's why the Warriors are able to sweep even with Thompson struggling, is the fact that the other guys stepped it up, like McGee, like Clark, Iguodala was struggling a bit from 3, but the rest of the guys really picked up the slack. The other big thing to notice here, let's go to minutes per game. Everyone for the Warriors is at 34 minutes per game, but when you look at the Cavs, LeBron's been playing 41 minutes a game. He might be tired, especially if this goes to 7 games, and he has to guard Kevin Durant this year. So instead of laying back on Harrison Barnes, who gave the Warriors basically nothing, 30% shooting, now he has to go mano a mano against Kevin Durant. And remember, Kevin Durant, when he was 22 in the NBA Finals against LeBron James, averaged 30 against LeBron. This is really going to put LeBron to the test when you're looking at how he does as a defender and an offensive player. He's going to have to play a full 40-plus minutes per game. It's going to take a lot out of him. And the other reason why I believe Clay and Durant are big X factors are their defense on LeBron too. Clay is one of the best defenders in the NBA. Durant's a great rebounder. He's going to pick up the slack for Andre Iguodala and the other rebounders on this team. If you look at this, you have Durant at 8, Green at 8. Last year, it was basically Green and then Iguodala as the second leading rebounder. So having that other rebounder is going to tremendously help the Warriors. And here's a little stat about LeBron that a lot of people don't talk about. So when he shoots the ball, he's shooting, this is incredible, 76% at around the rim. These are some advanced analytics for you. And he takes about half his shots from there. So half his shots he's shooting 76% on dunks, layups, just bullying his way to the basket. However, if Clay and Durant, who are both pretty big, pretty strong players, get him to shoot on the outside, LeBron James is only shooting, get this, 38% from mid-range and 36% from outside overall when you count three-pointers. So if they can get LeBron to shoot outside, they have a chance. And when you look at the trends from the last 2 finals, if they're able to shoot if they shoot halfway decently and score over 100, which is still well below their season average, they're going to do well. They're going to beat the Cavs with their average over 100 points per game. So some other key things to look at. Mike Brown, this is a bit of an X factor. He's coaching for the Warriors instead of Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr's still injured. That's a big X factor because Mike Brown's not the best coach in the NBA. He does a lot more ISO and 2-man pick and rolls than Steve Kerr, who here you can see is one of the best coaches in the NBA. Tyronn Lue, he's a great coach too. He brought the Cavs to the NBA Finals last year and won, and brought them back again this year with a great playoff run. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. Mike Brown used to coach LeBron. Maybe he knows a bit more about them. But I'm a little bit worried about that if I'm a Warriors fan myself. So based on everything that I just told you, I would go with it's hard to go against the Warriors just because this does remind me so much of 2014. And I believe that they're just hungry and want this more. That sting from last year is going to drive them through. And they're not going to ease off the pedal like they did last year. I believe Draymond's going to be more under control. And they're going to actually try to sweep them and send a message. Just Green's enthusiasm in that quote earlier in the year, I know he's been pushing his guys very hard to get here and to really annihilate them. It's going to be really interesting. I know that's Golden State's goal. Cleveland's goal is just to win this series. It's not to annihilate Golden State. So just going in with that mindset, you have to go with Golden State because their goal is to absolutely destroy and crush Cleveland. So let's see what NBA 2K thinks. Let's simulate the playoffs here.